Eala keeps up SEAster act with Tjen in Abu Dhabi semis. Alex and Janice's full focus now on doubles. Southeast Asians Alex Eala, WTA doubles number 136, and Janice Tjen of Indonesia, number 68, continue on with their partnership with a spot in the WTA 500 Mubadala Abu Dhabi Open doubles semifinals. Read, Alex Eala, Tjen stun second seeds, reach Abu Dhabi semifinals. The next test for them are fourth seeds Tereza Mihalikova of Slovakia, WTA number 28, and Olivia Nichols of Great Britain, WTA number 26, on Friday, with the semifinal set not before 8 p.m. Manila time. It will be the first meeting between the two pairs. Mihalikova and Nichols reached the semifinals after defeating Irina Khromakeva and Andrea Klepik, while Eala and Tjen advanced with a straight sets win over second-seeded Kristina Buxa and Shuai Zhang. Singles play came to an early end for both SEAsters, with Eala bowing out in the quarterfinals and Tjen exiting in the round of 16. At the same time, Eala's schedule rolls on, as she is already listed in the WTA 1000 Qatar Open main draw, running from February 8th to 14th. Get more of the latest sports news and updates on spin.ph. Notice on unauthorized and unlawful use, publication, and/or dissemination of spin.ph content. Please be notified that any unauthorized and unlawful use, publication, and/or dissemination of spin.ph's content and/or materials is a direct violation of its legal and exclusive rights to the same, and shall be subject to appropriate legal action/s. Under the white Abu Dhabi sun, the court shimmered like a mirage, and Alexandra Eala moved through it as if she had learned its secrets early. The air was thick with heat and expectation, the kind that presses against your skin and asks what you're made of. Across the net stood Tjen, calm and coiled, a familiar presence from the same waters, the same stretch of the world where humidity, hustle, and hope grow together. They called it the SEAster act, half pun, half prophecy. Two Southeast Asian players, stitched together by geography and grit, meeting on one of tennis' more unlikely stages. Abu Dhabi is not Manila. It is not Jakarta. Yet when Eala stepped into the semifinal, it felt as if the sea itself had followed her inland, carrying echoes of home. Eala's tennis has always had a rhythm that feels coastal. Her strokes arrive in waves, measured, patient, then suddenly crashing. Against Tjen, she kept that rhythm, refusing to rush even when the rallies stretched long and the sun refused to blink. Every point became a small negotiation, power versus placement, nerve versus nerve. And in those moments, the SEAster narrative stopped being a headline and turned into something more intimate, a shared language spoken across the net. There is a special tension when familiarity meets ambition. They had trained in similar conditions, dreamed under similar skies. They knew the unglamorous parts of the journey, the early mornings, the long flights, the quiet doubts that creep in when the spotlight is elsewhere. Yet the semifinal offered no room for sentiment. The court demanded honesty, and Eala answered with clarity. Her footwork was sharp, carving angles that pulled Tjen wide before snapping the ball back into open space. When the rallies grew physical, Eala leaned in, absorbing pace and returning it with interest. It wasn't loud dominance, it was composed authority. The kind that says, I belong here and I'm not done yet. Between points, she paused, eyes steady, breath controlled. The noise around her, the crowd, the distant hum of the city, faded into background static. What remained was intention. Each serve carried purpose. Each return was a small declaration that Southeast Asia's rise in tennis was not a novelty but a continuum. Tjen, to her credit, refused to yield easily. She counterpunched, probed, tested Eala's patience. There were moments when momentum wavered, when the match teetered on a knife's edge. But Eala's response was maturity beyond her years. She trusted her patterns, trusted the work done far from the glare of television cameras. The SEAster act, in that sense, was never about mimicry. It was about parallel growth. Two players shaped by similar climates but forging distinct paths. Their semi-final clash felt like a conversation between those paths, respectful, intense, and unapologetically competitive. As the match tilted in Eala's favor, the symbolism grew louder. Here was a player who had long carried the weight of being the next one, now stepping fully into the present. Abu Dhabi's hard courts became a canvas, and she painted with confidence. When the final point arrived, it did not explode, it landed. Certain. Eala's celebration was restrained, almost reflective. She acknowledged Tjen with a nod that spoke volumes. There was pride there, but also recognition. Today was hers, but the bigger picture belonged to both of them, and to the region they represented. In the tunnel afterward, the court already felt distant, like a dream evaporating in daylight. But the meaning lingered. The SEAster act was alive not because of slogans or shared passports, but because of performances like this, composed, courageous, and quietly defiant of expectations. Abu Dhabi had witnessed more than a semi-final. It had seen a continuation. And Alexandra Eala, carrying the sea in her stride, walked forward as if the horizon had finally come into view. Eala keeps up SEAster act with Tjen in Abu Dhabi semis. In the heart of Abu Dhabi, where the desert sun melts into shimmering heat above the hard courts, Alexandra Eala strode onto the court with the quiet confidence of someone who knows exactly what she wants. Across the net stood another Southeast Asian talent, Tjen, equally poised, equally determined. It was more than a semi-final match. It was a meeting of histories, of dreams nurtured under the tropical sun, of journeys that began long before international recognition. The story of Eala's rise has often been framed as meteoric, an effortless talent emerging from the Philippines, carrying the weight of expectation and the hope of a region still hungry for tennis representation on the global stage. But anyone who has watched her closely knows it's not just talent. It's discipline, patience, and a rhythm to her game that mirrors the waves of the sea she metaphorically carries wherever she goes. And in Abu Dhabi, that rhythm was on full display. They call it the SEAster act, a playful nod to the Southeast Asian connection between Eala and Tjen. But there's truth behind the nickname. Both players come from regions where tennis infrastructure is still developing, where the path to professional recognition is often paved with sacrifice. And yet, here they were, facing off in a semi-final in one of the Middle East's premier tennis tournaments, a stage far removed from the familiar courts of Manila or Jakarta. From the first serve, Eala's approach was methodical. She moved with the quiet authority of a player who knows her game, her footwork precise, her angles calculated. Tjen, familiar with her style but unyielding in her own approach, tested her with deep returns and occasional drop shots, trying to force mistakes. But Eala's calmness was almost tactile. She seemed to absorb the intensity of each rally and redirect it with purpose.